Hello again. I'm slightly late this morning. It's been a bit of a rush. My thought this morning is done is better than perfect, and I was a little bit late starting my yoga practice, but decided that done is better than perfect. I still wanted to do it, even though it was all a bit of a rush. And I'm here. I'm a little bit late, but again, done is better than perfect. So what I thought I'd talk about today is a little bit about identity. And our identity as mums, and also our children's identity. I was thinking about this because obviously there's an awful lot that's changing at the moment. So we've got little children who are starting school and nursery for the first time. We've got children that are moving from infants to junior, from junior to secondary school, and we've got kids who are moving into adulthood as they maybe start apprenticeships or university or college. And so it's all a big change for our kids. And then also as well alongside that, I think, is the change in identity for us as mums. And I was thinking about this, and I remember how sad I felt when my youngest moved from infant to junior school, and again last year when she moved from school to university, and walking up the road and seeing all the school kids in the uniform and thinking, I haven't got one who's doing that any longer. And I think there's a sort of sadness there about the change as they move through their lives. And so as I was thinking about this, I was thinking about what I was talking about last week about letting go of our children. And what I didn't cover really was the thought of the empty nest syndrome. And we think about that in terms of mums whose children have left home. But I think as well a bit of that empty nest syndrome can apply to younger mums too, where their children perhaps have been at home and now they're at nursery, or they're at school, and everything's changed. And the one thing you can say about life is it's always changing. And you know, we just about think we've got it sussed out, and then something comes along and changes. And I think that's true of our identity as well. We tend quite often to think of as our identity as being fixed. You know, who are we? Who is our true self? But I think while there's part of us that's always the same, there's also parts of us that are constantly changing as well. And I think the really wonderful thing about both being ourselves and also having young people is that we are on this voyage of discovery together. Not only are we learning who we are, we're also learning who our children are. And I think that's sort of one of the really fascinating things about being with people, is that we never really know who people are. We never actually even know who we are. We might have a good idea, but things are constantly changing, and it's this discovery. And I think that is part of what can help us when we are working with the empty nest syndrome of whatever age children we've got. And it's to think, as things change, it's actually, where is our identity? And what are we making our identity? Because sometimes we can make our identity as, say, the mother of school-age children, or as the mother of toddlers, as the mother of university students, I could say for me. But could I be Jo? Not the mother of. Can I just be me? And how do I actually make that happen? And I think part of it is focusing on what brings me joy. And I just want to give a shout out to one of my online friends, Ronya, who runs something called Joy is My Compass. And she's really helped me in thinking about, as things change in my family, where am I going to find my joy? What is it that I want to find joy from in life? So she said to me, she said, well, who would you like to have coffee with? And it's such a simple question, but obviously as things change in our families, sometimes the great thing about that is we do begin to have a little bit more time. So if you've got a student who's just gone to university, there might be time, rather than shooing them out of the house to school, you could actually sit down and have an extra cup of tea before you go to work. Or you might be lucky enough to be able to think, well, I don't have to get up as early any longer. Or if you've got a little one who's just gone to nursery, you might be able to go home and think, well, I know a lot of us think, right, that's it, I can get on with the washing and the hoovering and the cleaning. But also you might like to think to yourself, well, maybe once a week I could have coffee with a friend, or maybe I could come home and sit down for 10 minutes and just watch a bit of mindless TV if that's what I want to do. We can do something that brings us joy, that brings us pleasure. And that's a way of finding out sort of who we are and what our identity is. And I think also it helps us to cope with these ideas of not being good enough, because often when we're thinking about not being good enough, we're very sort of inward focused. We're thinking about what we think about ourselves. Whereas if we can become outward focused, if we can think about what's going to light me up today and have a sense of purpose outside of those sort of identity things like being a mother of, if we can think, what else am I think that helps us. And also in terms of being not good enough, rather than thinking about, oh, am I good enough to do this, we can think about, what do these people need? So say you were doing a piece of artwork, what are you trying to communicate to people, rather than thinking, is it good enough? That's the sort of only example I can think of very quickly off the top of my head. But for me personally, I have a great sense of purpose in terms of who am I trying to reach out to and what am I trying to do with my life. I don't want my life to end now that my children have left home. I actually want my life to continue to grow, and I'm trying to discover in what I'm doing what it is that is my sense of purpose. I have a strong sense of purpose. I know I want to reach out to people. How exactly does it work? And that's what I'm in the process of discovering. And also it can be quite a playful process as well. But for some of you, you will be in jobs that you feel is your calling already. And so just thinking about one of you who's a teacher and who also can have this feeling of not being good enough, is not to think about how you're what you're doing in terms of, is it good enough or not, because sometimes you'll measure up and sometimes you won't, but to focus on the people that you're trying to serve, the children that you're trying to help, and focus on their needs and think about what it is that they need. And that begins to counteract that really down feeling of, am I good enough? It's more, what can I do? It's focusing on the on where you're going, rather than feeling a victim to these thoughts and feelings about not being good enough. So I've sort of had a bit of a funny set of thoughts about what to do with this live feed today. I hope that's all made sense to you. I'll be back. I'm working at the moment on thinking about helping mums with their children's university applications. I'm working on that at the moment, and I'll be doing either a live feed or doing a video as part of that process. So if that's the stage you're at, keep an eye out for it. And I'm also thinking of doing something about applying for secondary schools, because that's coming up as well. So if that's something that's of interest to you, please do keep an eye on the business page, and you'll see me talking about that there. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you again, same time, Tuesday at 9:15 next week. Thank you. Bye.